Welcome to the Living the Dream podcast with Curveball. If you believe, you can achieve. Welcome to the Living the Dream with Curveball podcast, a show where I interview guests that teach, motivate, and inspire. Today, I am joined by author, speaker, and seven-figure business owner, Ken Miller. Ken has an amazing story, one of resilience. So we're going to be talking to him about his story and where he came from, what he's up to, and gonna be up to. So Ken, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Curtis. It's my pleasure to be on your podcast.
Why don't you start off by telling everybody a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Let me give you the high-level version. I'm 62 years old, African-American male. I'm a business owner. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a speaker. I am also an author, and I also own property in other countries. So that's what I do today. Predominantly, again, is the business and the speaking and the writing of books. But to get to where I am today, which is an individual that is successful, one that's very comfortable in his own skin, and one that has very little friction in my dealings with others or the world at large. I took a journey, and the short version of the journey is 62 years ago. My mother was a white teenage runaway in New York, and my father was a black pimp and drug dealer in New York City. And I'm the byproduct of that union. And my mother put me up for adoption at birth. And so for 6 years, I was in foster homes. And then I was adopted by Irene and Sam Miller. Unfortunately, my father was a violent alcoholic, which was to come into play a few years later after I graduated from college. I was precocious, and I was accepted to Dartmouth. I was a National Merit Scholar and accepted to Harvard, and I went to Dartmouth College, Ivy League. Got out when I was 21 years old, where I tell people with a degree in fraternity, with a minor in drinking. And I went into the corporate world, did very well for my first 2 years. Then I relapsed, and I was to spend the next 20 years homeless on the streets of Seattle, Reno, Sacramento, Jackson, Mississippi. I'm also a 3-time convicted felon. I've spent time in penitentiaries, years in penitentiaries on 3 different occasions. But today, I am coming up on 21 years clean and sober. And like I said, I own multiple businesses and am what many people would identify as an individual that is successful. And I am. And I'm also merely and humbly a child of God and very, very comfortable in my walk. How's that for an intro?
Oh, absolutely. Great. And congratulations on your 21 years of being clean.
Mm-hmm.
Well, talk to the listeners about, I guess, what led you to your 3 times incarceration and how you was able to make it through and bounce back despite those incarcerations. Because, a felon, getting a felony is like a death sentence. You get blocked out of a lot of things and excluded from a lot of things. So how were you able to, overcome it and get around those things and be the successful man that you are today?
A lot to unpack there. So how did I become a crack addict on the streets? Very simply is I've always had an addictive personality. I'm an alcoholic. I was an alcoholic from literally probably the first month. I had my first drink in college. 1 month later, I'm a full-blown alcoholic. What does that mean? It means very simply, I do not with any certainty have the ability to stop when I start drinking or doing drugs. I can't. I don't have that switch that shuts it off. So I go until the wheels fall off. I go until I am drunk or under the influence of enough drugs. And I make really poor decisions under the influence of drugs and alcohol. And so, what led to my difficulties, of course, is being an alcoholic. And then once I got to the streets of Seattle and was drinking, I was introduced to a drug called crack cocaine in 1988. And it's not so much under the influence of crack, I did a lot of crazy things, but in pursuit of money to buy crack cocaine with my Ivy League college degree, I did robberies, larcenies, violence, pimping, drug dealing. I was a male prostitute for a lot of years. These are the things that I did to pay for my addiction. And sooner or later, they catch you. And I got caught at least on 3 occasions for felonies and many more for misdemeanors. I tell people I really don't count misdemeanors. We call it a lay it down. I got to lay it down for 30 days, 60 days. So that's what got me into the penitentiary. It was, felony crimes, the ones they caught me for. And one time I remember I looked in, they had a thing called the Washington State Blue Book. And the Washington State Blue Book had like all the different crimes in their code and number. And I picked out 26 felonies that I had committed. I didn't get caught for most of them. In fact, the great majority of them, I didn't get caught, but I did. And by the time I came to my third felony, I was so thankful to go to prison again. Thankful. I was so grateful that I had an opportunity to take a step back and look at this destructive behavior that when I went into prison, I was literally glad to be going back to prison. Hope that answers.
Yep, that absolutely does. So let's talk about, basically, like I was saying, if you're a felon, you
Mhm.
are blocked out of a lot of things. You miss a lot of opportunities. How were you able to, get out of prison, get clean, and be able to get around the stigma of being a felon to being the successful man you are today?
So there's 2 imprisonments. There's the imprisonment of body, and there's the imprisonment of mind. So yeah, I was locked up, and I would get out of prison and still think I'm imprisoned because I've imprisoned myself. We used to have a term on the street, judge, jury, and executioner. And that was a role that we would undertake in relationships to other people. I'm going to be your judge, jury, and executioner. Okay. Well, you can say that to yourself. And so when the first 2 times I came out, I'm just an ex-con. I'm just a prisoner. I'm imprisoned by my own thinking. And what that means is we have a term called fetters or chains. I mean, I've chained myself to lack of hope. I've chained myself to a sense that I can't grow or I can't do well or everything is stacked against me. Well, I got out the third time and I didn't have that sentiment. And I didn't use the circumstance as an excuse. Let me repeat that. I didn't use the circumstance as an excuse because I could have used, I'm a 3-time convicted felon. I could have used that as the excuse to not grind, the excuse to not show up for work every day, the excuse to not to put in the 20 applications. When I got out in 07, which was a terrible time to get out because the economy had went to bad. I couldn't get a job. I couldn't get a full-time job. The only thing I could get was a part-time job working in a warehouse with my college degree, Ivy League. And I got fired from that job. They fired all the ex-felons because one of the guys messed up. It wasn't me, somebody else. And I could have said, poor me. I could have said, I'll just go back to dealing. I'll go back to pimping. I'll go back to selling myself on the streets. I didn't do that. What I said is, I got to find another job. And I went out there and I remember I got this job and I was living in a halfway house because that's what we do when we come out on paper, on parole. And my rent was like 195 a week, something like that, room and board. And I was taking home like 160 a week. I had $35 to live on for another week. I still got to buy some food, still got to get a bus pass, all that. So be it. I always look at it this. Those were the cards I was dealt, but I am not going to let my past imprison me again. And to this day, and I speak from the stage, I put it in my books, I tell people that I work with, it's all, you can go to social media. This is who I am. This is my truth. This is my experience. And individuals went out, I'm not even going to say on a limb, they went out on some trust because a lot of it was by the way I carried myself. There was sincerity behind my eyes. There was eagerness behind my eyes. There was a sense that maybe there was integrity and that there was an alignment between what I said and what I did. And therefore, Mr. Miller, we're going to give you a shot. And then this is a key one. I performed. I was a great employer. I'm not an employee anymore. I employ people. I own the businesses today. But for my first 7 years, I worked for someone else. I was cool with that from 07 to 14. But I was a good employee. Because so many times we get these opportunities, and I say we, I'm talking about people of certain communities, we get an opportunity and then the door is open. We go in there and we want to kick our feet up and not do the work, not perform. So that's what I did. I had a different mindset and I did not allow the circumstance to be the excuse.
Let's take a quick break.
Okay, everybody, it's Michael E. Cullen II.
And I'm Sesame and Carta from the All Too Real 2 podcast. We're passionate about movies, TV, and pretty much all things pop culture.
Dive into the chaos of failed sitcoms, direct-to-video sequels, and the quirky realms of cinema and TV.
Join us every Thursday for your dose of All Too Real 2 entertainment.
We'll guide you through debates like whether Howard the Duck qualifies as a superhero.
Ponder if Larry the Cable Guy could be the new Rock or Schwarzenegger.
Discover if some shows and movies should have stayed in the cutting room.
Ever heard of a sitcom featuring that dictator with the funny mustache? Well, we watched it.
We're dedicated to unraveling the peculiarities of pop culture, sometimes with awesome guests.
So, if you're into the eccentric world of pop culture,
listen and subscribe to All Too Real 2.
Available wherever you find podcasts
and on Age of Radio.
Well, congratulations, and I know that you are now a 7-figure business owner, and including, like you say, owning properties in other countries. So, tell the listeners about the businesses that you do own that made you a 7-figure business owner, and talk about the properties that you own in
Sure.
Other countries and how you got to that point.
So my first company was 2014. So when I got out, I got a job in the warehouse. I went from the warehouse to another warehouse. And then I had an opportunity to go back to Alaska where I had grown up. And I got a job, white collar, being a supervisor for a convention center. What they call a food and beverage supervisor, F&B. Did that. And then I went to work for a soup kitchen as a fundraiser. Fell in love with that. First of all, I was very familiar with soup kitchens. I had lived in them or been a part of shelters and soup kitchens for 20 years. So I'm very familiar. But now here I am, clean and sober, helping to bring in funds for this organization. Did a great job. And then I was asked if I would become a consultant, teaching people how to be a good fundraiser. And so I started my first business, which still is going on 11 years later, called Denali FSP. And what I do, or what my company does, is that we, consult and coach nonprofits in fundraising. And then we also have a very special niche in that we write federal grants for tribes throughout the country. My wife is Alaska Native. Then my second company that I started was Evolution, which is a company that I have offshore virtual assistants that are located in Ecuador and in the Philippines. And they help out clients, but they're also trained in AI. I could spend the next half hour talking about AI. I'm a big, big believer in AI. And you know what I love about AI? AI did not care I was a 3-time convicted felon. AI did not care that I was a 6-year-old Black male. Didn't care, okay? AI does not care who you are when you put that prompt or query in. And I tell all people, especially of color, to learn AI. Get off that one. Next company, I have a speaking company, KenMillerSpeaks.com. I speak all over the country. I share from the stage, predominantly on resilience, but I also talk about trust. I also talk about self-esteem. I also talk about mentoring, but predominantly I talk about coming back from the setback. And believe me, I've had some setbacks. And then my next company is BecomingKenBook.com, and that's my book, my company I do for when I write books. So I wrote a book called Becoming Ken, bestseller, and it tells the story. Black man's journey from the Ivy Leagues to prison and back again. It's on Amazon, all that. I'm writing another book. I'm in the process writing a book on respect and disrespect. It is going to be powerful. Then I'm writing another book by the end of this year on mentoring within communities of color. And then I have a third book I'm writing this year, already in the process, on fundraising, practical or pragmatic fundraising for nonprofits. 3 more books coming out this year. And then I have property in Ecuador. I have a 6-bedroom home that I built with cash, with swimming pool on the beach. And I also have a condo that I have a company down there that does the rentals of those properties that I own in Ecuador, South America. We'll be there in 2 more days. Can't wait. I'm going on vacation. So that's what I have done. 3-time convicted felon, ex-crack addict, everything that I did out there on the streets. But today I am a proud Black man that has a very strong spiritual foundation, and I give back. That's what I predominantly do, is I give back. Thank you for that question, Curtis.
Absolutely. It sounds like you're out there killing it. And you mentioned AI. So kind of talk about AI. And, I know you talked about AI for people with color. So kind of talk about that and talk about what it did to you. And for those who don't know and who haven't embraced it yet, let them know what it can do for them.
Okay. So AI, the term is artificial intelligence. And what it is information in the digital realm that can, with a prompt, or let's call it a question, answer the question from the, what we call compendium, the breadth of knowledge that's out there in the digital realm. That's what most people know is AI, what are called large language models, LLMs, and the example is Chat GPT. So I can talk about it. So there's really 5 different areas of AI, Chat GPT, LLMs. There's AI image, there's AI audio, there's AI video, and there's what we call automations and agentic. You don't have to go to that level. Just learn Chat GPT well, or Gemini, or Grok, or Claude. Doesn't matter what the large language. But again, what you're doing is you are asking questions to then take all this information uh, that has been put together literally over the history of the world, and having that give you an answer that can make you much more efficient to be effective. That's in a nutshell for what 95% of the people need out there. That's it. So we use the AI. And again, AI does not care your background, doesn't care your physical ability or disability, does not care that you're a former drug addict or an active drug addict. What it cares is what is the prompt and or question that you're asking of me. And it will do its best within the quality really of the prompt or question to answer that. But AI doesn't do the work unless you get into the automations. We're not going to really go there. You still got to do the work. You got to take that information and then utilize it in the most efficient and effective manner. Okay. So that's what AI. So why do I love it so much for communities of color? Because you couldn't get into Harvard. You couldn't go to Dartmouth. And I'm not saying that in a negative way. I did go to Dartmouth, but you didn't. But people look at that. I went to Dartmouth and they give me a shot. Okay. Or I went to college. You may not have been able to go to college, but you can still put in a great prompt, get a good answer, and use that answer to help you and your loved ones, to help feed your family, to help give you direction as to what is my next step to take. That's what it can do. It literally can even the playing field, but you've got to learn the AI. And I tell people, and what I suggest is go to AI Foundations. It's on the school platform, and learn AI. Or go on YouTube and look at Jeff Sue, or look at, there's another gentleman, or look at Carter Siraj, or any of the other great teachers that are teaching AI. But the one I recommend is the school platform, AI Foundations. I get nothing from recommending that to you. I just want you to be successful. So that's my thoughts on AI and AI in the communities of color.
Well, that was the next question I was going to ask you to give the
Mhm.
listeners resources, and you've
Mhm.
already talked about your books and stuff like that. So, besides your books, tell us about any other upcoming projects that you are
Sure.
working on that listeners need to be aware of.
So one of the things that I do is that I run a Black men's book study for free, for free. And what that consists of is Black men having discourse on a nonfiction book. We're doing Cry Like a Man by Jason Wilson. Okay. Great book, phenomenal book. We just did the 6 Pillars of Self-Esteem by Nathaniel Branden. So if you're interested in that, look me up. Ken Miller 84 is my LinkedIn. Just go to Ken Miller 84 on LinkedIn, and you'll be able to communicate with me. No problem. If you want to join the group, it's free. It will always be free. The other thing I do is I mentor. I don't have the capacity right now, but I probably know somebody who would mentor you. I know men and women. I only mentor men, and I have 11. At one point, I had 28. I have 11 now. that I mentor. I strongly suggest getting a mentor. The other thing to do, and this is what I tell people who want to be successful, learn how to speak from the stage. Learn how to speak. And it's a skill, but learn it. Go to Toastmasters, go to NSA, National Speakers Association, and learn, because what it will do is it'll allow you to communicate your value, your offer to more people. It will scale you. It will scale your message. And I truly believe that every person listening has a message, has something that's of value to society or to their communities that they choose to represent or belong to. So those are just a few of the things that, that I recommend. And, but grow, be curious, learn. You're listening to this podcast, you've invested some of your time, and I hope I've been of value to you. Most people say that when they've heard me speak, I share something of value, and that's what I want to do. I'm cool. Let me say this again. I'm cool. What I mean by that, I want nothing from you other than your success. I want nothing. I'm not asking for anything. You don't have to pay me nothing. I'm a millionaire. I got houses. I got cars. I got a beautiful wife. I got grandchildren. I got self-respect. I have a church. I have friends. I don't need anything from anybody. But God has called upon me to give back. And that's what I do. And I have a gift. I have a gift to speak from the stage. I have a gift to come on a podcast and share honestly and share with a motive that is not of self, but of God. That's my gift. And I'm glad that Curtis has given me the opportunity to be able to share this with others. But I believe for you just to listen to a podcast like this, I believe in you. I'm preaching to the choir, but avail yourself and get a mentor. I'm really big on mentoring, really big, male, female, but get a mentor. What else, Curtis?
Is there a website that listeners can go to keep up with everything that you're up to?
Sure, social media is one. And then my website does have a blog on there. So you can go to denalifsp.com. I have 4 websites. Just go to that one. But the key one is really the LinkedIn. And then just go to Instagram, Ken Miller. You'll see me on there, Becoming Ken Miller. Or go to Facebook, Ken Miller. You can put Ken Miller author or Ken Miller speaker. And I'm the Black gentleman, 62, good looking. That's me. And, follow me. Join up with me. I share a lot of good things. I have a team of people that do my social media. I have employees that take care of this. But it's my voice. It's my videos. It's my podcast that we do the Facebook shorts, that we do the postings on Instagram or TikTok. But it's my team that does that. But yeah, and I'd love if you would follow me. And I'm the type, this is my truth. If you send me a direct message in LinkedIn, I will answer it. I will take the time to answer it. I'm not that special. If you were to call me, I would answer it. My phone number, 907-250-8488. I've had that same number for 15 years. Give me a call. If I can answer it, I will answer it. If not, I will get back to you. That's my word. I have integrity. What comes out of my mouth, my actions match. I'm too grateful. I should be dead. You know what the judge said to me last time I got sentenced? He said, Mr. Miller, the next time you come into my courtroom, I'm giving you the habitual criminal statute. You know what that is? That's 25 to life. If I stole $51, I was getting 25 to life. I got 3 strikes. I got a life sentence looking at me. I've been clean for 21 years. Why? That's one of the reasons why. I do it because I love being sober and clean and being a child of God. But the other way, fear works. Works for me. So I hope that helps.
Oh, it does. So close us out with some final thoughts. Maybe if that was something I forgot to talk about that you would like to touch on, or any final thoughts you have for the listeners.
Sure. Sure. I'm just going to say two. I could talk about 20. I'm just going to talk about two. I want to talk about forgiveness, and I want to talk about trust. So let's start with forgiveness. One of the greatest gifts that you can have is the gift of forgiveness. My father shot my mom 6 times, shot her 6 times, and then came to shoot me at my job. Hit her 5 times from a foot away. She lived, thank goodness. But I harbored a lot of resentment, anger, and it's not the reason why I became a crack addict, but it sure helped keep me in it. Okay. It gave me a circumstance to make into an excuse. Okay. I knew at one point I would have to forgive him. And my father did like 8 years, got out, and called him up. And I went down, we sat down, we talked. And I forgave him. I have forgiven him. I harbor no resentment. He's passed away. So it's that forgiveness doesn't mean I forgot. Doesn't mean that the incident wasn't not negative, but as a human, I forgave him for his brokenness, because my father was broken in a lot of ways. Black man growing up in the Depression, fought in World War II, to be a black man with as much pride as he had, to have to deal with what he had to deal with. I can understand his brokenness. He still shouldn't have done what he did, but he did what he did. But I can understand his brokenness. Okay, so that's forgiveness of others. One of the key things I had to forgive is myself. I did a lot of negative stuff. I hurt people. I hurt people on the streets. Emotionally and physically, I hurt people. And I carried a lot of guilt. I carried a lot of shame. I was the lowest thing you could be on the streets. And you're like, what's that? I was a male prostitute. I turned tricks with men to pay for my crack addiction. And I hated myself for that. I hated it. It was a secret, but I hated it. And I hated that was me. So I'm shame-based. I'm guilt-based. And finally, once I got cleaned up, had a few years, went to counseling, went into prayer, I made a conscious decision to forgive myself. I was broken. So many things that had happened to me and things that I had done to others, but I was broken. I'm not broken today. I'm well today, folks. I'm well. And it's all right to be well. You don't always have to have a problem. I don't have a problem today. I have some circumstances, but I don't have a problem. So I had to learn how to forgive myself and to forgive others. And I have. I harbor no resentment toward any human being. Any human being. Okay? I harbor none. Okay, so that's forgiveness. The other one is, and excuse me, my allergies kicked in, is trust. And all trust is a belief in a perceived future action. So when you don't trust someone, you don't believe in their future action. That's all it is. I, by nature, default to trust. I just default. And sometimes people take advantage of me. So be it. I can afford it. I can. But more importantly, I can afford it emotionally. I can afford it. Because I don't see your transgression against me because I've trusted you as disrespect. I've seen more people killed, more people put in prison over disrespect than anything else. It's not over drugs, money, or sex. It's over disrespect. That's just the manifestation of your disrespect to me is you taking my money, taking my dope, or taking my girl. But it's not them. It's the disrespect or perceived disrespect. So how do you learn trust? How do you learn trust? How do you engender trust? How do you create trust? One is do trustable things. Number two, align your words with your actions. A belief in a perceived future action. So if you say something and your future actions don't align with it, how are they going to trust you? How? How? And then how do you trust others? That's a choice. That's a decision to trust others. But understand that people are fallible. Understand that people are fallible and they're human and they will make mistakes or they will forget. I'm not giving them excuses, but don't embrace it as disrespect to you as a human. Because that's not what it is. It was a mistake 99% of the time. I'm late. I forgot to do it. Something else came up. But it's not that I think you're less than. Because what is disrespect? What is respect? Respect, very simply, is acknowledgement of a person's position or stature within a community. As a drug dealer, I had a stature. I had a position. And if you steal my drugs, I got to deal with that because you did not acknowledge my position. If I'm the grandfather or the father and you talk back to me as a child, you did not acknowledge my position as the head of this household. You see how that respect works? If you go to your pastor and use profanity to your pastor, you've not acknowledged their position within the community of the church. Let alone, we talked about the community of the family, the community of the streets. We have a community in the penitentiary. There are some things. You call me a B in the penitentiary, you call me a punk, we got a problem because that's our community. And in that community, that means something. And then I've got to manifest a reaction to that because you did not acknowledge me as a member of this prison community. So trust. There's a great book called The Speed of Trust. Please read it. Please read it. Great book. That's like, I don't make this stuff up. I've absorbed information and I can articulate it back out. I can give examples. I can give, most importantly, solutions. Because there's a lot of people who can talk about the problem. Tell me about the solution. Give me an example from your life instead of something out of a book. And I can do that. Again, that's a gift. And then I try to share that gift with others. So that's just two of them, trust and forgiveness.
Well said, ladies and gentlemen. Be sure to check out Ken Miller's books. Check him out on social media. Follow, rate, review, share this episode to as many people as possible. If he comes to a city near you to speak, check him out. Follow us on your favorite podcast platform and visit www.curveball337.com for more information on the Living the Dream with Curveball podcast. Thank you for listening and supporting the show. And Ken, thank you for all that you're doing to make the world a better place. And thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Curtis.
For more information on the Living the Dream with Curveball podcast, visit www.curveball337.com. Until next time, keep living the dream.